We're coming to you right here from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios and 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio and 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. Hope you guys have had a fantastic day. It's kind of been a balanced day at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. We got some things going on out there with some of our people that are stressful today, and they're dealing with some issues, and so we're just gonna any of you guys out there that just are prayer people, we would appreciate those prayers right now. I'm not going to get into the details of what's going on, but some of our people are hurting. They're dealing with some challenging issues, and they sure could use your prayers if you're a praying person. So you can take that with you and do with it what you want. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and most of the stuff that we talk about on the show, it doesn't really matter until it matters. And then when it matters, it really, really matters. And I know that's kind of a silly statement, but that's kind of the way it works. All this stuff, it doesn't make any difference whether or not you exercise or you eat right, or you get any sleep, or you take your fish oil. None of that stuff matters on a daily basis to most people. It's just stuff we talk about, right? It's just stuff wellness people talk about just because they're in wellness. If they weren't in wellness, they wouldn't talk about it, just like most of the people who are not in wellness. Like, they're not interested in it. When I was coaching football, I didn't talk about wellness. I talked about football. That's what I talked about the whole time. When I was training race horses, I didn't care about wellness. I was talking about horses. That's what we did. And when I was playing football, it was the same exact way, right? And if for some reason my life changed and I wasn't in this, it would be interesting to see. I thought about it today. It'd be interesting to see if I would move and be so interested in wellness. But that's my calling right now. I'm in wellness. And that's what I do on a daily basis, is talk about it. But on a daily basis, it's hard to see how it adds up. It's hard to see how it really makes a difference on a day-to-day basis, because one of the biggest issues I've always had in chiropractic and in wellness is, how do you measure what doesn't happen? If you're well today and then you're well tomorrow and then you're well the next day, then how do you even know what difference it makes? Like, how do you measure that? How do you say what you're doing makes any difference? It's like, well, I don't know. And the one of the ways that you can measure that is to stop doing what you're doing and then watch yourself get worse. And then you can be like, oh yeah, maybe some of that stuff that I was doing mattered. But when it does come down to it, when you do get sick, you're going to search the world over to try to figure out how to be well. When you have chaos going on in your family because of a family member that's just not functioning properly, you just do anything you can possibly do to figure out how to make it well. And that's when all of this stuff starts to add up. That's when it all starts to really get serious about what we're talking about and about what we're doing. And so, and then when it does get to that point, it's heavy. It's heavy to deal with. It's heavy on us. It's heavy on our whole family. And that's kind of what we talked about last night in the sadness and depression show that we had. It was really about that, about depression and how it overtakes us and what it does to us, and how we give up and how we lose hope and how we don't know what to do, and because nothing's going right. And I had that conversation 3 or 4 times today about depression. And one of the things that's common is it's January 23rd. We're in the middle of winter. It's cold. We wear long sleeves all day long. We're not getting outside. We're not doing our walking. We're not getting our vitamin D. So we're in that time of year right now. In my opinion, I don't have a study to back it up. There may be a study to back it up because my opinions aren't necessarily that smart. So I probably got it from somewhere. But in my opinion, I really believe that part of what we're dealing with right now amongst all of us in the wintertime is the hardest time of the year to deal with things. And if we weren't prepared when we got to winter, then we're dealing with some things that are causing us to be a little bit depressed. We're seeing the negative part of life. We're seeing the downside of the whole thing. The glass is half empty all of a sudden, and then now we start looking for solutions to our problems in manners that don't really have anything to do with our problems, right? Sometimes if we don't look in the wellness world, we'll end up looking in the pharmaceutical world, and then that's going to that's not the way to go. The pharmaceutical world is not the way to solve the depressive issue, and so it'll get you by for a short period of time, but it's not going to get you by for the long run. And so the way that we want to do that is do the wellness things. And so we're going to talk about it every day like we talk about it. We're going to talk about it every night from 6 to 7 right here on this show. And we're going to talk about wellness things. And what I really hope is that when you come along to the wellness things, when it finally gets important enough to you to talk about wellness, when it gets important enough to you to try to understand how your body works and what your brain is doing and some of the things that you do. One of my guys today told me he got diagnosed with fatty liver disease. He's 46 years old. And he told me he got diagnosed with fatty liver disease. And now he's cleaning up his diet. And it's like, that's right. That's what we do. That's what human beings do. We wait until we have enough pain in our life or enough threat in our life or something that gets our attention. And then if we're lucky enough, remember what I was talking about our brain, that sometimes it gets so far down the road that we don't have the capacity to do that we can't turn the corner back. At 46 years old, he has a chance to do something with fatty liver. At 68 years old, it may be too late. At 75 years old, it may be too late. And so that's something that we always should remember. And I had a conversation with him today, and I just want to remind the people, I want to remind you about fatty liver disease. If you're out there dealing with fatty liver disease, if you're getting centripetal obesity, where your legs are skinny, your arms are skinny, but your belly is bigger than your butt. If your butt is bigger than your belly, you're just fat. You're going to get you got to deal with fat things. But if your belly is bigger than your butt, did I say that right? If your butt is bigger than your belly, you're just fat. If your belly is bigger than your butt, that's a problem. That's a liver problem. That's a centripetal obesity problem. That's fat accumulating, visceral fat accumulating around your organs and causing disruption. And so let's have a refresher about fatty liver disease really quickly, because I just want to make sure that we cover it and so that we are on the same page. And and you can go back if let me switch this out here so you can see. We can kind of write some of this out. And so if you want to know stuff about fatty liver disease, one of the things that you can do is you can go look up Robert Lustig. Go to YouTube and look up Robert Lustig. Listen to him talk Sugar the Bitter Truth. You can look for that one. You can look for him. Listen to him talk to Andrew Huberman. Listen to him talk to just about every time he talks. He's going to break that down. We broke down hacking of the American mind on one of our Wednesday night shows when we were talking about that. But if you want to know some stuff about what's going on, and some of the stuff that Dr. Lustig taught me is that let's have that refresher right quick. I know we've been over it before, and I know you guys know it. All right, the liver is the detoxifying center. It detoxifies toxins, right? When you have toxins, then they go to the liver. And that's where we get rid of that stuff. Okay? Fructose is a toxin. Too much fructose in the liver, according to Dr. Lustig, is where we get our fatty liver disease. If you overload the body with fructose, then your body is going to have to try to get rid of that because fructose is a toxin, and you're going to have to try to get rid of that, and you're going to get rid of it in your liver. So the question is, where do we get it? Well, everybody knows that we get it from whiskey, right? Everybody knows we get it from whiskey. You get liver disease from whiskey. You drink too much alcohol and you get liver disease. Everybody knows that. Cirrhosis of the liver, right? Where else do we get fructose? The next thing we get for fructose is sugar. Because what is sugar? Sugar is 50% glucose plus 50% fructose. That's what sugar is, right there. And as soon as that little bond, there's a bond that holds them together. As soon as it hits the acid in the stomach, the bond breaks loose. It destroys the bond between the two, and now you've got half your calories from fructose and half your calories from glucose. Now, glucose is going to be used by all the cells in your body, and fructose is going to go to your liver. And that's straight up right there. So, if I hear one more time about Bluebell's new twisted cinnamon ice cream, right? It's a big deal. All of a sudden, it's a big deal. Bluebell came out with a new ice cream. I looked it up today. There are 27 grams of sugar, including 21 grams of added sugar. The ingredient in the Bluebell ice cream is milk, cream, skim milk, cinnamon bun dough, which is wheat flour, sugar, water, palm oil, soybean oil, cornstarch, cinnamon. I know you don't care, but I'm just telling you. Corn syrup, sugar, brown sugar, high fructose corn syrup, water, coconut oil, cinnamon butter, cornstarch, sunflower lettuce, and natural flavors. There you go. All right. We got 280 calories in 2/3 of a cup, but we've got 108 calories that are coming from sugar. So and that's in 2/3 of a cup. And I looked up a normal bowl. A cup, a half a cup is about 4 ounces. So you get about 3 half a cups. So you get a cup and a half in a 12-ounce bowl. And I make sure when I get a bowl of Bluebell, I don't know if you guys do, but when I get a bowl of ice cream, I fill that dude up to the top over it. And I'd be all about putting some Hershey syrup right over the top of that new twisted cinnamon or whatever that stuff is called. The cinnamon twist. Yeah, cinnamon twist, right? So I'd be glad to put Hershey syrup over the top of it. So I gotta think to myself, 2/3 of a cup, I'm probably going to double that. That's like a cup and a third. So a cup and a half on 12 ounce. I mean, I got to at least be getting close to 2.5 servings per one bowl of ice cream. So there's 108. If you double, let's just say you doubled it to 216. So what's going to happen to that when you have that bowl of ice cream? What's going to happen is there's 216 calories from sugar because there's 4 calories in a gram of sugar. There's 27 grams of sugar. So you're going to get 216. Well, what does that mean? That means 108 of those calories are going to go into all the cells of your body because that's glucose. But then 108 of those are going to go to your liver to toxify your liver to give you fatty liver disease. That's what that's going to do right there with that bowl. Now, I don't know how many more grams of sugar you add when you put the Hershey's on top of it. And if you take the Reese's peanut butter cups in the miniatures, you can kind of stick them around the edge of the bowl, or you could get you a chocolate chip cookie and stick it on the edge of the bowl as well. Because I lived my life like that for 50-something years. I get it. I know exactly what that is. I know what it does to us, right? So that's another way that we get fructose to our liver is through sugar. Another way we get fructose to our liver is through juice. Orange juice, apple juice, grape juice, any of that stuff is straight fructose. So it's going all to the liver. So we're going to get those three things right there. So when you're 46 years old and you're married and you have 2 kids and you've got 2 grandchildren, and then all of a sudden your doctor runs some blood work on you and they tell you, hey man, you got fatty liver disease. What might we want to really watch out for? We might want to watch out for our fructose, right? And we want to make sure that we're cutting out those things, that we understand where we're getting those things right there. That it's not fat that makes us fat and sick. It's carbohydrates. It's refined carbohydrates that make us fat and sick, and that's what gets us right there on that glucose. And I had an awesome picture today, and I want to share it with you. You guys can go that are on the radio. You can go and check it out on the Facebook page. But there, I was going through my phone this morning, and I saw this picture, and it was 1939. It's a former miner, now blind, with his son, Washington County, Missouri. And this was, I don't remember the capture, the site. This is something that I saw on Facebook. There's someplace this morning, and I stared at that picture, and I looked at that. It's this. I mean, he's in his overalls. He's got a cap on. He looks like a young Henry Fonda is what he looks like. But that's a picture right there. And I looked at that. I looked at the walls. The walls are like it's like they're wallpapered with newspaper or something. That old piece of furniture that he's got right there, and his son standing there in a pair of overall-looking things with like two-tone pants, got something sewn in from the knees down. And I just looked at that little kid, and I looked at that man, and I thought, and I really thought to myself, I was like, that we need. You can't talk to that guy about wellness. That guy is going to have a hard time discussing wellness. And then because that guy's got lots of issues on his mind, right? There's lots of stress that's going on in that man's life. First of all, he's blind. He's lost his eyesight. He's holding on to his little boy. And this little boy is going to eat whatever you put in front of him. So I went to that website and I clicked on there, and I went into to look at some of the pictures that were on there, and I got another picture right here that I thought was is cute. It's a cute picture, but these three little guys right here. This is Oklahoma in 1939, and I thought about that. I looked at that picture and I thought to myself, like, wow. What and these are 3 little guys. They all got overalls on. 2 of them have overalls on with no shirt underneath it. One of the little guys has a shirt on underneath it, and it looks like they're eating supper. They're sitting at a table. The wall behind them might have some sort of texture on it. It's just I don't know. That's that old cement looking stuff, like the original sheetrock type of stuff made out of rock or whatever that stuff is. And I was looking at what was on that plate, and it was just like a plate of beans, from best I could tell. It was like there's a couple bowls, and it was just like it was what they had to eat to keep from starving to death, right? That's what they were eating. They were not discussing wellness in 1939 in Oklahoma. They didn't talk about sugar and chocolate and all the rest of that stuff. They didn't understand what they were doing, right? And the reason I show these pictures, and you guys on the radio, I hope you do go back and look at them. And Ken Adams has done a great job lately of sharing this stuff on X as well, the old Twitter. And so some of you guys might follow us on those formats, and you can see these pictures on there as well. If you want to go back and watch it on that. I hate for you guys to miss out, but it just hit me that I just really got a lot out of that picture this morning, because I just saw it and I was thinking to myself about the health of those kids. And they're little old thin kids. It's not like they're obese is they're not obese. They didn't have that much to eat. And they played all day long. I guarantee you they've been outside playing and running and doing stuff all day long. But it's kind of what, and in 1939, I think I did the math, it's like 85 years ago in the United States. It's not like it's hundreds of years back. It's just 85. It's like these kids could be, they might still be alive in their 90s right now, and if they made it that far. And so the reason I say that is because it brings to mind the idea of the evolution of thought, and the evolution of thought when it comes to our health, and the evolution of thought when it comes to our nutrition. We eat some of the things that our parents ate, and they eat some of the things that their parents ate, and they eat some of the things that their parents ate, and that's their parents right there 85 years ago. So a lot of times when you get to talking to someone about nutrition, they're eating what they know to eat, and they're not thinking about necessarily what it is that's going on in their body. But we know dang well that we can look at our cell phones, and like there are so many other areas in life that we have evolved. Like I'm sitting here in my office looking at an iPad, talking to you on social media, right? I mean, like if you're watching this show or the radio's old. So if you guys are watching the show on the radio, then it's an old thing. It's been around a while, right? But in old like 100 years or something. Like it's not like it's maybe, I don't know what the original radio was, but it can't be more than 150 years old. I bet we're not talking about a long time, but we've advanced, right? Like we're sitting here going through a social media thing, and we've advanced, and what we've done is we've advanced with knowledge because we've got more science, we have more technology, we have more history, we have more understanding. There's an evolution that we have in the way that we function. There's not an evolution that's going on in the physiology of our body. The same exact ways that you got fatty liver disease in 1939 are the same exact ways that you get it now. But we didn't eat that much sugar in 1939 because we didn't have enough money to eat that much sugar in 1939, and they didn't try to sell it to us like it was crack cocaine in 1939. They didn't wrap it up in cinnamon twist or something like that and make us think, make out like it's a big deal, like make out like it's something good for us. Like man, that's a big deal. I can't wait to get my bowl of Bluebell and all of the disease that comes with it. Right? I know I sound hypocritical because I've lived my whole life that way, but I've finally evolved just a little bit in my thinking about some of the things that we ought to eat, right? And if it was 1938 or 1939, I probably would have eaten anything I could eat to keep from starving to death. But in 2024, you might be one of those people. You might be one of those people that eat anything you can eat to keep from starving to death. And there's a lot of you, and I want you to know that I want you to know that it's by design that you end up with fatty liver disease. It's by design. It's by greed and design. The food industry knows exactly what they're doing. They know how to get you hooked. They know what dopamine is. They know how you downregulate dopamine receptors when you fire up that sugar into that brain. They know that it causes you to want more of it and want more of it and want more of it, right? It's not. That's why they wrap it up in all of those beautiful bowls with all those colors and all those beautiful pictures for us, right? And then they make out like it's some sort of fabulous deal. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of people in the ice cream industry and the sugar industry who are just trying to make a living. I get it. They don't think about it. That we got a new store coming in Lubbock. Everybody, I saw the deal about it, about sweets something sweet or something like that, right? Those folks look like good folks. They look like good, serious folks. Like they're just trying to make a living, just trying to do the best they can. But in reality, what they're doing is they're selling crack to us, and they're making us sick. And it doesn't matter until it matters. And then when it matters, it's really going to matter. It really does put a damper on things when it gets down all the way to the bottom of it, and it causes death and destruction. It causes chaos amongst our families. It causes heaviness on us when it really does get down to that thing, and it doesn't have to be that way. So I know that was depressing first half of this show. Now we were talking about depression. We were talking about depression. So, hey, when we come back, if you come back, I hope you do, let's talk about some things that solves this problem, right? Let's talk about the ways that we can get out of this depression. We can get on our feet. We can get some things going. And I'll try to be a little bit more upbeat and positive on the second half of the show. So, you guys come back right after these messages. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. Yeah, I know that was a little bit negative. It was a little bit depressing, that first half right there. But, I think sometimes we got to be real about it. And that's kind of, and I was thinking about it today when I was coming back from Littlefield. I just was thinking about it's life. It's Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. That's what the show is about. That's what happened today. Today we had to deal with some stuff. Today we've got some really good people dealing with some stuff, and it's really hard to deal with those things sometimes. And sometimes that's what we talked about yesterday when we talked about situational depression. When sometimes our depression has nothing to do necessarily with us directly, but it has to do with those who are close to us who are going through struggling times. That sometimes can overwhelm us, right? And that's hard to deal with. And so, yeah, they just kind of stacked today. They were stacking a little bit. There was one after the other who were dealing with some pretty serious issues today. And I just want to be as real as I can when I come on the show and try to share with you those pieces of information. I just want to share with you the real life that goes through, and that not every day is just all sunshine and roses. Some days, and that's the balance of life, right? Half of it sucks. Half of it is awesome, and half of it sucks. And we're excited about getting to walk through it, and we want to be prepared to do it, and we want to do the best that we can. So sometimes we just got to deal with those sucky days. And I hope you guys out there that are dealing with those sucky days, I really hope you hang on. Just hang on. There's going to be sunshine tomorrow. Just as bad as it is out there, just hang on a little bit. Try to stay social. Try to stay around your family. Try to stay around those people that love you. Try to do the things that you need to do to try to get yourself through it. And just keep going and keep working and keep getting yourself I know it sucks, but just keep going. I think that's really the best option anyway. So, okay, everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC, and it's Tuesday, January 23rd, and we we had a nice, depressing first half of the show. So let's see if we can make it better. Let's see if we can get out of it and see what we can do to get out of it. See if we can maybe make this thing a little bit better than we did. So let's remember last night. Let's remember for a second this little vision. Let's remember we got a brain right here. we got a right side and we got a left side. And, last night we took health to church and we broke down sadness and depression. And we talked about what was going on in sadness and depression. And we have this adrenaline on the right side. We have this dopamine on the left side, right? And when we have the proper functional patterns working in our brains, when our brains are firing the way that they're supposed to fire, then we get this upper brain dampening of our lower brain. The lower brain is the amygdala. The amygdala starts the stress response. The stress response causes us to go into fight or flight, which is we know about all those situations that causes that, right? So what we want is we want to dampen that lower emotional brain. We want to make sure that we can get that information up and over to the left, and that gives us the perfect amount of dopamine on the left so that we have motivation to move and anticipate. We want to get up and work, but we're not too low where we don't have any motivation, and we're not too high to where we have any sort of irritation or irritable, right? And then we get the left side working, and then once that happens, now the right side and the left side go back and forth, and we really are. That's what we want. That's, man. If I tell you, if I could really define health for you, that's what we're trying to get. And if we don't get that, then what will end up happening is we'll have some sort of stuck issue on that right hemisphere. And then what we'll end up with is low dopamine on the left. And that's where we want the sugar. That's where we go get the pornography. That's where we go. We think that's a sin. It's a physiological, neurological it's our humanly solution to a bad neurological problem over there. That's where the sugar is. When I don't get that proper information over from the right to the left, then that's where I start looking for external dopamine sources. That's where I go get meth. That's where I go get drugs. That's where I go get cigarettes. That's where I go get sugar. That's where I go get chocolate. Those are the things that I'm trying to do because they're the things that make me feel alive. They're the things that make me want to do something. And if I'm not getting it from an internal source, then I lose out on that deal, and that's what causes me. So what I thought was, I was like, okay, let's go back to Spark. Remember the Spark book? I thought about that. I was like, let's go back and listen to Dr. Rady and say, hey, wait a minute. Is there anything in this book that has to do with depression? Was there a chapter in here that was dedicated to depression? And it was like, lo and behold, chapter 5 was dedicated to depression. And it was him talking about how do you get what are some of the studies that are done? Like, Jason, you keep talking about this right brain, left brain thing, and it's about to drive us all nuts, and we're getting tired of hearing about it. And we don't even understand it in the first place. And so it's like, what do you keep talking about this for? Right? Well, let's take it into real life. Let's take it into some things. And the chapter is, and I'm not going to go through the whole book like we do on a book review night, but the chapter is called Depression, Move Your Mood. And he talks about this guy. He said Bill didn't know he was missing out. When he turned 50, he realized he was 20 pounds overweight, and he decided to go on a diet and start running. Before long, he began to lose weight, and he noticed some dramatic side effects. He became less critical of himself and others, and less of a grouch. His wife and his children picked up on the shift and wanted to spend more time with him, which made him feel good and further improved his attitude. So he went running. He went running and moved his feet. It made him less of a grouch. It made him more social. It gave him why? Why did it do that, right? It did that because the running charged up the right hemisphere. Then the running kicked the right hemisphere over to the left hemisphere and gave him the appropriate amount of dopamine. And that gave him motivation to move. And the right hemisphere functioning properly is where our empathy comes from. It gave him, he noticed he became less critical of himself and others. The criticalness of himself and others was this non-functioning brain that we have, right? So he gets into our understanding of depression followed a similar path. Pure serendipity led to our first antidepressants. When in the 1950s, it was discovered that experimental tuberculosis drug made people inappropriately happy. There we go. We gave this drug to people and they got happy. A few years later, a new antihistamine product, similar mood elevating effects, and spawned a class of drugs called tricyclic antidepressants. Suddenly, there was a medical treatment that could soothe symptoms of depression. No, there wasn't. Okay, maybe there was soothe the symptoms of depression, but it didn't fix the depression, right? All it did was cause us to be able to block the neural pathways that were there. But as soon as you get off the drug, then you end up with the same exact problems. But so he goes on, he talks about a bunch of stuff in there and some different things. According to the World Health Organization, depression is the leading cause of disability in the United States and Canada, ahead of coronary artery disease, any given cancer, and AIDS. About 17% of American adults experience depression at some point in their lives, to the tune of $26.1 billion in healthcare costs. So he goes on and keeps going, which brings us back to the quest to find biological culprit. By reverse engineering our original accidental antidepressant. I think that's a big statement right there, because that's what we talked about either last night or sometime last week. As you start to develop an understanding of this, of health, I think one of the things that naturally happens is we reverse engineer what happened. It's my default of the way that I think about things. It's like, okay, this is happening, so why is this happening? Let's back it up. Let's go back to the beginning and say, what is the cause of what's happening right now, right? So accidental antidepressants, we discovered that they increase the activity of the so-called monoamine neurotransmitters, norepinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin. Norepinephrine is adrenaline. It's in the brain, right? That's what we knew. That's what they discovered from these accidental antidepressants. When a research psychiatrist at Massachusetts Mental Health Center found in 1965 that the breakdown product of norepinephrine, called MHPG, was reduced in depressed patients, we got excited about that there would be something to measure. Yeah, if you don't have any norepinephrine, if you don't have any adrenaline, then you don't break it down. There's nothing to break down, so your MHPG is low. That makes total sense, right? Then someone might tell you that you have a chemical imbalance, right? No, you have a low norepinephrine problem. And his pioneering work led to the monoamine hypothesis, which holds that depression is caused by a deficit in these three neurotransmitters. Most of our treatments and research since then has been about trying to reverse that deficit. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to reverse the deficit of the chemicals in the brain that are leading us to depression. There's your cold therapy, right? What did Candace Pert say? 500-something% increase in adrenaline. Not Candace Pert. The Dopamine Nation. Anna Lemke. Sorry, I read Candace Pert in here. Dopamine Nation. In men that were in 1 hour in 57-degree water, they had a plasma dopamine increase of 250%. They had a plasma norepinephrine increase of 530%. That's what we went over last night, right? You increase that 530% of adrenaline on the right side to have a sustained over several hour increase in dopamine on the left side to give us a way to get out of our depression. Now, I know that it's hard to hear me. You've got to be in the mild to moderate level right now to be able to hear me with that. If you're in the severe depression part of it, you're going to have a hard time believing this. It's not going to make sense. That's where we need each other when we're down and out. When we're down and out, we really do need each other because we need to pick each other up because the person can't pick themselves up. They don't have the capacity to pick themselves up because their chemistry is so jacked up in their brain that it's going to be low adrenaline leading to lower dopamine, leading to search for external, there's our cinnamon twist, right? It's like, of course, why do we come out with cinnamon twist in the middle of winter? I wonder why they did that. They just all of a sudden got it all put together and they kind of finally figured out a way to do that. And don't get me wrong, I love Bluebell. It's the best ice cream on the planet. Like everybody knows that. Like if you're going to eat ice cream, you ought to eat Bluebell. It's just the best there is, right? But it's not an accident that they came out and hit us right in the middle of the most depressive time of the year when we have low dopamine levels. And what are we searching for? We're searching for an external source right there, right? So that's what they got into. Well, he went on and worked on some stuff. And what I have highlighted here is around the same time, I came across an article about a hospital in Norway that was offering depressed patients the option of treatment with antidepressants or daily exercise. This was a shock. These drugs were really just being introduced, and the results were forced to change in the way that we thought about treatment. Yet here was a hospital offering exercise for the people with severe depression, and it was working. So, but the results were lost in the shuffle at a time when we were just plumbing the depths of the brain. The need was for hard science, right? So then he goes on. A postdoctoral neuroscientist from Johns Hopkins University named Candace Pert had recently discovered that there were opiate receptors in the brain, meaning the body had a built-in way to kill pain with molecules that worked. That molecules that worked like morphine. Endorphins, as they became known, dulled the pain and the body induced euphoria in the mind. The theory that exercise fills your brains with morphine-like substance matched the good feeling everyone got. It gave us the expression, a runner's high, the extreme version of the effect. But there's an interesting little piece right here on the other side, and it gets into pain. Pain is related to depression. And after Pert's discovery, others conducted experiments to see if endorphins were indeed the link between exercise and elevated mood. They expected to find that the endorphin blocking drugs would prevent runner's high, but there were conflicting results. Then we found that endorphins produced in the body, the ones detected in runners, cannot pass into the brain, and scientific enthusiasm for the endorphin faded right there. So those endorphins that the runners are producing, they're not passing into the brain. But then studies suggest that endorphins produced directly in the brain contribute to general feeling of well-being, and that usually comes along with exercise. Come down here down the page. One of the best examples is a landmark research project from the Human Population Laboratory in Berkeley called Alameda County Study. Researchers tracked 8,023 people for 26 years, surveying them about the number of factors related to lifestyle habits and healthy starting in 1965. Healthiness. They checked back with the participants in 1974 and in 1983. All the people with no signs of depression at the beginning, those who became inactive, all of the people had no signs of depression at the beginning. Those who became inactive over the next 9 years were 1.5 times more likely to have depression by 1983 than their active counterparts. On the other hand, those who were inactive to begin with but increased their level of activity by the first interval were no more likely to be depressed by 1983. In other words, changing your exercise habits changes your risk for depression. Changing your exercise habits changes your risk for depression. Several other sweeping studies have looked to the correlation from slightly different angles, and all of them came to the same conclusions. A massive Dutch study with 19,288 twins and their families, published in 2006, showed that exercisers are less anxious, less depressed, less neurotic, and also more socially outgoing. Right? They're less depressed, they're more socially outgoing, they have less anxiety because of exercise. They're moving their feet, they're driving their brain. We had it written on the board. We had today one of the things that the exercises that we had in the gym this morning. It had a number of a list of things, and on the bottom it said cardio. And I kind of smiled. While I was on the bike, I was reading that. When I was going through my workout, I was reading that deal, and I saw where it said cardio down there. And I thought to myself, remember, we ought to call that neuro. We ought to think about that our exercise, it's not for our heart, it's for our brain. That's where it works the best. Of course, we get a cardiovascular response, but we get a cardiovascular response after we get a brain response. I was listening to Ninja Nerd, and if you want somebody that breaks stuff down for you, I think his name is Zach. He does a great job on YouTube. It's called Ninja Nerd, and Ninja, Ninja, Ninja Nerd, right? And I was watching that the exercise respiration or something video. I was listening to it as I was watching the road, but I was listening to the exercise respiration video as I was driving back a while ago, because he does a super great job of breaking a lot of that stuff down. And one of the very first things that happens that he started with when he was doing a video on exercise respiration, the first thing that he started with was the brain. He started over on his board talking about the little parts of the brain and how they respond and how they caused us to start to breathe, and how the motor cortex. He had a picture of the brain. He had the frontal lobe. He had the parietal lobe. He had the motor cortex and the sensory cortex, and how activation of our muscles. When we start to activate our muscles in exercise, there are little side nerves that come off and hit the parts of our brainstem, that lower part of the brain, that fire in and fire the nerves that go to our lungs to make us start to breathe. Our intercostal muscles and our diaphragm, our phrenic nerve that goes to the diaphragm, and how those nerves start to fire when we start to fire the motor cortex. Like there's these little nerves that come off of that main firing pathway that cause that to happen. And then once we start to move our body, he got into the muscle spindles in the middle of the muscle cell and the Golgi tendon organs at the tendon, the muscle tendinous junction, and another joint receptor that all feed back into the brain. And now we're getting proprioception. We're getting information coming into the brain and going up into that somatosensory part of our brain. And that as they pass through the brainstem, they also give off these side nerves that go to those same exact nucleuses that go same right back to the lungs to make us breathe again. So it was really interesting because the first thing he started with when he was trying to discuss exercise respiration was he started with the brain, right? That's really the way it works. Where is depression? Depression's in the brain. Why is it depressed? Because it's not functioning properly. What could we do to make it function properly? We could exercise, right? That's what they found out. Several other sweeping studies have been looked at the correlation with from slightly different angles. No, I just read that one right there. A massive Dutch study No, that was it. A Finnish study. Sorry, there's like 3 or 4 of them in a row right here. A Finnish study with 3,403 people in 1999 showed that those who exercise at least 2 or 3 times a week experience significantly less depression, anger, stress, and cynical distrust. Why distrust? Because your right brain knows, your left brain makes up stories. If we're not getting that proper pathway going across there, if we're not getting that information to the left, then the left brain is going to make up stuff. It's going to lie to you about things. It's going to lie to you and tell you stories that's going to make you mistrust things. It's going to cause you to make up stuff because you're not getting the big picture of things. So here we go. The Dutch study said that people are more socially outgoing. The Finnish study said that they have a decrease in cynical distrust, right? And those who exercise less or not at all. This was a cardiovascular risk factor survey, including questions about mood, which is to say they were talking about broader range of symptoms than clinical depression. Another study from the epidemiology department at Columbia University in 2003 surveyed 8,098 people and found the same inverse relationship between exercise and depression. If you exercise and get your feet moving, you will find out that your depression decreases. So there are certain things. One of the conversations that I had today, one of my ladies just started crying because she's getting old herself. She's 85 years old and she goes to the gym 4 days a week, and the people around her are dying. Her best friend's husband died. She had other folks around her that died, and it was just sad. And one thing that I do realize about sadness is that it's real as this desk is real. I cannot figure out exactly. I cannot figure out how to exactly overcome sadness. Not overcome it, completely stop it. It's almost a gift, really. If you think about it that way, I do. It's just a gift of feeling, because who wants to be numb, right? Like, who wants to just go through life and not feel anything? So there's just things that make you sad. And I think it ought to be celebrated, actually. I think it ought to be celebrated that, you know what, I'm human. I'm real. I'm alive. I have feelings about things. And now, I don't want to be sad for days on end and days on end and days on end. I got to get through it, right? I got to keep myself moving forward, and I got to get through it. But it's definitely a thing. And she was sad. She was sad in that moment. And it was there. And then it was like, okay, now what do? That's where you got to get back to the big picture. That's where that Bible comes into play, because it gives you some of that, it gives you the answers to the big pictures of things. It gives you some realness to the big pictures of things. And that's been going on for a long time. I just read you Spark, right? And I don't know what the copyright date for Spark was. 2008. Original copyright date 2008, right? And it's okay for me to read this and say, hey, there's some knowledge in this book, right? I think the same thing goes along with the Bible. I think we read the Bible and say, hey, there's several thousand years of knowledge right here. What we were listening to last night with Jeremiah was 500 something years before Christ was around. So we've got almost 3,000 years of 2,500 years of time frame that's gone by, that of knowledge in that book. So I think we can gain some of that knowledge. And the things that we're learning is, if I can eat better, and I can move my feet, and I can get my sleep, and I can make sure that my brain has the DHA and the chemistry that it needs, the nutrients that it needs to work properly, that I can actually move myself towards health. Like, I got a chance at 46 years old, if I can cut out fructose and get my feet moving, I actually have a chance to reverse my liver disease. They won't tell you that. They'll try to give you a drug, but they can. You can reverse your liver disease if you will choose to reverse your liver disease. You can get through your depression too. One of the ways, study after study, thousands and thousands of people over and over, if you move your feet and exercise, you can get through that as well. So I hope you guys, I'll just say thanks for sticking with me on that show. I know it wasn't super inspiring, but tomorrow night should be more inspiring. We'll get into the Master and His Emissary again and see if we can kind of get into chapter 2 a little bit, which is my favorite chapter. So we'll see you guys tomorrow night.